The bullet that grazed Faith Zimmerman's shoulder in the Montana Territory summer of 1883 was meant for a man she had never met, and that single moment of misplaced violence would alter the course of two desperate lives forever. Faith stumbled backward against the rough wooden post outside the Jordan Valley General Store, her hand flying to the burning pain that seared across her left shoulder. Blood seeped between her fingers, warm and sticky in the oppressive afternoon heat. The sound of hoofbeats thundered past as three riders tore through the dusty Main Street, their faces obscured by bandanas, guns still smoking from the botched robbery attempt. Miss, are you all right?" A woman's voice called from somewhere, but Faith's vision was already blurring at the edges, the world tilting sideways as she tried to keep herself upright. Strong hands caught her before she hit the ground. Through the haze of pain and shock, Faith looked up into the most striking pair of gray eyes she had ever seen. The man holding her had a weathered face, tanned from long days under the sun, with dark hair that curled slightly at the collar of his dusty shirt. A day's worth of stubble shadowed his jaw, and there was a hardness to his features that spoke of a difficult life, yet his touch was surprisingly gentle. "I have got you," he said, his voice low and steady. "Just hold on." Faith wanted to protest, wanted to tell him she could manage on her own as she always had, but the words would not come. Instead, she felt herself being lifted, carried with purpose as the stranger's boots struck a determined rhythm against the wooden boardwalk. Doc Harvey, open up." The man shouted, his chest rumbling against Faith's side. Within moments, a door swung open and Faith found herself being laid carefully on an examination table in the doctor's office. The room smelled of carbolic acid and dried herbs. Doc Harvey, a portly man with wire-rimmed spectacles and a graying beard, immediately set to work examining her wound. "Just a graze, thank the Lord," he muttered, though his hands moved with practiced efficiency. "But it needs cleaning and stitching. This will hurt, miss." Faith bit down on the leather strap the doctor offered her, tears streaming down her temples as he cleaned the wound with alcohol. Through the searing pain, she was aware of the stranger still standing nearby, his presence somehow grounding her. "What is your name?" Doc Harvey asked gently as he began to stitch. "Faith," she managed to say around the leather. "Faith Zimmerman." "You new to Jordan Valley, Miss Zimmerman?" She nodded, unable to form more words as another wave of pain washed over her. "She can stay at my place," the stranger said suddenly. Both Faith and the doctor looked at him in surprise. He cleared his throat. "I mean, I have got a spare room. My sister used to stay there before she married and moved to Billings. Miss Zimmerman will need somewhere to recover, and it does not look like she has anywhere else to go." Doc Harvey raised an eyebrow but said nothing, returning his attention to his stitching. Faith wanted to refuse, to maintain the pride that had carried her through the last terrible year. But the truth was she had arrived in Jordan Valley with exactly $3 to her name. No family, no prospects, and now a bullet wound that would prevent her from taking any work for at least a week or two. "I cannot pay you," Faith whispered once the doctor had finished and removed the leather strap from her mouth. The stranger stepped closer, and she could see him properly now. He was tall, perhaps in his late 20s, with broad shoulders and calloused hands that spoke of hard work. There was a gentleness in his eyes that seemed at odds with the gun belt slung low on his hips. "I am not asking you to pay me," he said simply. "Name is Quinn Zimmerman, though folks call me Quinn." Faith's eyes widened. "Zimmerman, that is my surname too." A ghost of a smile crossed his face, the first she had seen from him. "Well then, Cousin Faith, let us get you somewhere you can rest properly." They both knew they were not actually related, Zimmerman was common enough. But the fiction provided a veneer of respectability, and Faith was grateful for it. Doc Harvey gave her instructions for caring for the wound and a small bottle of laudanum for the pain. Quinn paid the doctor's fee before Faith could even think to protest, then helped her to her feet. The world swayed again, and she found herself leaning heavily against his solid frame. "Easy now," he murmured. "One step at a time." His home was a modest cabin on the outskirts of town, set back against a stand of cottonwood trees that provided welcome shade. It was simple but well-maintained, with a small barn for his 2 horses and a chicken coop that housed half a dozen hens. The inside was clean if sparse, with handmade furniture, and a stone fireplace that dominated one wall. "The bedroom is through there," Quinn said, gesturing to a door on the right. "I will bring you some water and something to eat once you are settled." Faith made her way to the room, each step an effort. The bedroom was small but comfortable, with a real bed frame and mattress, a luxury she had not experienced in months. A patchwork quilt covered the bed, and lace curtains hung in the single window. Clearly, his sister had lived here, and he had kept it as she left it. She lowered herself onto the bed with a groan, her shoulder throbbing despite the laudanum beginning to take effect. Through the open door, she could hear Quinn moving around the main room, the clink of dishes, the sound of water being poured. She should feel afraid, alone in a stranger's home, but somehow she did not. There was something about Quinn that felt safe, trustworthy. He appeared a few minutes later with a cup of water and a plate containing bread, cheese, and some cold chicken. "It is not much," he said, setting them on the small table beside the bed, "but you need to eat something." "Why are you doing this?" Faith asked, accepting the water gratefully. "You do not know me." Quinn was quiet for a moment, leaning against the doorframe with his arms crossed. In the softer light of the bedroom, she could see the weariness etched into his features, the shadow of old pain in his eyes. "Because someone did the same for me once," he finally said. "When I had nothing and nowhere to go, seemed only right to pay it forward." He left her to eat and rest, closing the door quietly behind him. Faith managed a few bites of the food before exhaustion overtook her, and she drifted into an uneasy sleep filled with the sound of gunfire and the thunder of hooves. When she woke, the room was dark except for a thin line of golden light under the door. Disoriented, Faith tried to sit up and immediately regretted it as pain lanced through her shoulder. She bit back a cry, but it must have been loud enough to carry because within moments, Quinn appeared in the doorway, a lamp in his hand. "You should not move so quickly," he said, setting the lamp on the table and reaching to help adjust her pillows so she could sit more comfortably. "The wound needs time to heal." "How long was I asleep?" "Most of the evening. It is nearly 8 o'clock now." He poured her a fresh cup of water. "How is the pain?" "Manageable," she lied. His expression suggested he did not believe her, but he did not push. "I made some stew for supper. Do you think you could eat some?" Faith's stomach growled in response, and despite everything, she found herself smiling slightly. "I think I could try." Quinn returned with a bowl of rabbit stew, thick with vegetables and fragrant with herbs. He had also brought a chair from the main room and sat down while she ate, watching to make sure she managed it without difficulty. "You still have not told me anything about yourself," he said after a while. "What brought you to Jordan Valley?" Faith swallowed a spoonful of stew, considering how much to reveal. But he had been kind to her, had opened his home without question, and she owed him some honesty. "I was looking for work," she said slowly. "I came from Ohio originally. My parents died of scarlet fever last winter within days of each other. There was nothing left after we paid their debts and the burial costs. No other family, no inheritance. I sold what little we had and decided to head west. I heard there were opportunities in the Montana Territory, that a woman could find respectable work in the growing towns. That must have been hard, Quinn said quietly. Losing both parents so quickly and then everything else. I thought I would find something in Billings, but there was nothing suitable. I kept moving from town to town, taking odd jobs where I could. My money ran out 2 days ago. Jordan Valley was supposed to be my last stop before I turned back east. She paused, her throat tight with emotion. I do not know what I would have done if you had not helped me today. I have nothing to offer in return. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with the weight of her desperation and pride. Faith felt tears prick at her eyes but refused to let them fall. She had cried enough in the past months to last a lifetime. Quinn was silent for a long moment, his gray eyes studying her face with an intensity that made her breath catch. Then slowly, a real smile spread across his features, transforming his face from merely handsome to something that made her heart skip unexpectedly. "You offer me a reason to wake up," he said simply. Faith stared at him, certain she had misheard. "What?" He leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees, that gentle smile still playing at his lips. "I have been going through the motions for a long time now, Miss Zimmerman. Working, eating, sleeping, but not really living. Then today, I saw you fall, and for the first time in longer than I can remember, I felt something. Purpose, maybe, or just the need to do something good in a world that often seems determined to be cruel." He shrugged. "You do not need to offer me anything. You just need to get better." Faith found she could not look away from him, could not find words to respond to such raw honesty. No one had ever spoken to her like that before, with such simple directness about emotions most people spent their lives hiding. "I do not understand," she whispered. "Neither do I, really," Quinn admitted. "But I know I am glad I was there today, and I am glad you are here now, even if the circumstances are not ideal." He stood then, taking her empty bowl. "You should rest more. Tomorrow we can talk about what happens next, but tonight just focus on healing." "Quinn," Faith called as he reached the door. He turned back, eyebrows raised. "Thank you, truly." "You are welcome, Faith." Sleep claimed her more peacefully this time, and when she woke to morning light streaming through the lace curtains, she found her shoulder hurt less and her mind felt clearer. She could hear movement in the main room, and the smell of coffee and frying bacon wafted through the door. Carefully, she maneuvered herself out of bed, using the wall for support. Someone, Quinn presumably, had left a clean dress draped over the chair. It was simple calico, a bit faded but well maintained, probably another remnant of his sister's time here. Her own dress from yesterday was torn and blood-stained, likely ruined. With some difficulty and more than a few winces, Faith managed to change into the clean dress. She braided her dark brown hair over one shoulder, avoiding the bandaged wound, and made her way slowly to the main room. Quinn was at the stove, his back to her, stirring something in a pan. He had changed into a clean shirt, dark blue cotton that stretched across his shoulders as he moved. Without his hat, she could see his hair was slightly wavy, curling at the nape of his neck. "That smells wonderful," she said, and he turned quickly, surprise flashing across his face. "You should not be up yet," he said, though there was no scolding in his tone, only concern. "I have spent enough time lying down," Faith replied, "and I refuse to be treated like an invalid over a graze." That almost smile appeared again. "Stubborn are you, when necessary." He gestured to the small table where 2 plates were already set. "Well, sit down before you fall down. Breakfast is almost ready." They ate together in companionable silence at first, but gradually conversation began to flow. Quinn told her about his horses, about the work he did breaking and training them for the local ranchers. He spoke about his sister, Margaret, who had married a shopkeeper and seemed genuinely happy in Billings. "What about your parents?" Faith asked, then immediately regretted the question when she saw his expression close off slightly. "Pa died when I was 15. Kicked by a horse he was trying to break. Ma never really recovered from losing him. She passed 2 years later. Folks said it was pneumonia, but I think her heart just gave out from grief." He stared into his coffee cup. "I understand something of what you went through." "I am sorry," Faith said softly. "It was a long time ago." He looked up at her. "But it shapes you. Losing people like that makes you realize how fragile everything is, or how strong you have to be to keep going." That too. The days began to establish a rhythm. Faith's wound healed steadily under Doc Harvey's care and her own determined constitution. Quinn left each morning to work with the horses, but he was always back by midday to check on her, bringing fresh bread from the bakery or vegetables from the market. In the afternoons, she would sit on the porch in the shade, watching him work with a young colt in the corral. He was patient with the animals, never rough or forceful, always speaking in low, calm tones as he gentled them to accept a halter, a saddle, a rider. Faith found herself mesmerized by the way he moved, the quiet confidence in every gesture, the genuine affection he showed the horses. "You are good with them," she called out one afternoon, about a week after the shooting. Quinn led the colt to the fence rail near the porch, running a hand along its neck. "They just need to know you will not hurt them. Once they trust you, they will do just about anything for you." "Is that how it works with all creatures?" Faith asked, a teasing note in her voice. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she felt heat rise to her cheeks under the intensity of his gaze. "I reckon so," he said slowly. "Trust is pretty much the foundation of everything worthwhile." The moment stretched between them, charged with something Faith was not quite ready to name. She was saved from having to respond by the arrival of Doc Harvey on his rounds. "Well now, Miss Zimmerman," the doctor said cheerfully after examining her shoulder. "You are healing up beautifully. Another week and you should have full use of that arm again, though the scar will be with you for life, I am afraid." "A scar seems a small price to pay," Faith said, after the doctor left. She found herself facing the question she had been avoiding. What would she do when she was fully healed? She still had no money, no prospects. Jordan Valley was a small town with limited opportunities for a single woman. She could possibly find work as a seamstress or laundress, but the wages would be meager, barely enough to afford a room at the boarding house. Quinn seemed to sense her troubled thoughts. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, he brought it up. "You are worrying about what comes next," he said. It was not a question. "I cannot stay here forever," Faith replied, though the thought of leaving this peaceful cabin, of leaving Quinn, sent an unexpected pang through her chest. "You have been more than kind, but I need to find work, make my own way." "What if you could do that here?" Quinn asked. He was not looking at her, his gaze fixed on the distant peaks. "I mean, not here in my cabin exactly, but here in Jordan Valley." "Doing what?" "The town is not large enough to need much in the way of services." "Actually," Quinn said slowly, as if working out the idea as he spoke, "I have been thinking. My horse training business is growing. I have more requests than I can handle on my own. What I really need is help managing the business side of things. Someone to handle the correspondence with clients, keep the books, manage the schedule, that sort of thing." Now he did turn to look at her. "You said you had some schooling back in Ohio. Can you read and write well? Handle figures?" "Yes," Faith said, her heart beginning to beat faster. "My father ran a mercantile. He made sure I learned bookkeeping, how to manage accounts and inventory. I can write a good hand too. Then the job is yours if you want it, Quinn said. I can pay you a fair wage, enough to afford a room at the boarding house with money left over. And if you wanted to take on some sewing or other work on the side, that would be fine too. The business work would not take all your time. Faith felt tears threaten again, but these were different from the desperate tears she had shed so often in recent months. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You have already done so much for me." Quinn reached over and took her hand, his calloused palm warm against hers. It was the first time he had touched her since that first day, and the contact sent awareness singing through her veins. "Because I meant what I said that first night," he told her. "You give me a reason to wake up, Faith. These past days, having you here, talking with you, watching you sit on this porch in the afternoon light, it has reminded me that life can be more than just existing. I am not asking for anything from you beyond your help with the business. If all we ever are is friends and business partners, that will be enough. But I do not want you to leave." The honesty in his words, the vulnerability in his eyes, undid something in Faith's carefully constructed defenses. She had been so determined to remain independent, to never rely on anyone after losing everything. But here was this man, this gentle, kind man, offering her not charity but a genuine opportunity, asking nothing but that she stay. "I do not want to leave either," she admitted. "I have not felt this safe, this at peace, in longer than I can remember." Quinn's smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. "Then stay, please." "I will stay," Faith said, and the rightness of the decision settled into her bones. "There is just one thing," Quinn added, suddenly looking slightly uncertain. "For propriety's sake, once you are healed enough, you should probably move to the boarding house. I do not want your reputation damaged by staying here, even with the fiction about being cousins. Small towns talk." Faith appreciated his concern for her reputation, even as a small part of her mourned the idea of leaving this cabin, leaving the easy intimacy they had developed. But he was right. If she was going to make a life in Jordan Valley, she needed to do it properly. "Of course," she agreed. "That makes sense." True to Doc Harvey's prediction, within another week Faith's shoulder had healed enough for her to have nearly full use of her arm. The scar was a puckered pink line, still tender but no longer painful. She moved into the boarding house, taking a small room on the second floor that overlooked the main street. Mrs. Patterson, who ran the boarding house, was a practical woman in her 50s who asked few questions and seemed satisfied with the explanation that Faith was working for Quinn as a business manager. The room was simple but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a small desk under the window. Faith threw herself into her work with determination. Quinn's records were a mess, notes and agreements scattered across various pieces of paper with no real system. She spent the first few days organizing everything, setting up proper ledgers for accounts payable and receivable, creating a filing system for client correspondence. The work was satisfying in a way she had not expected. Each task completed, each column of figures that balanced, each clearly written letter sent to a prospective client felt like building something solid beneath her feet. She was creating stability for herself, proving her worth through her labor. Quinn seemed amazed by what she accomplished. "I had no idea it was this bad," he said one afternoon, surveying the neat stacks of papers and the organized ledgers spread across the small desk he had brought into the cabin for her use. "How did I ever manage before you?" "Poorly, from what I can tell," Faith said, but she was smiling. "You have 3 clients who have overpaid you and 2 who still owe you for work completed months ago." He shook his head ruefully. "I am much better with horses than with paperwork." "Lucky for you, I am good with both," Faith replied. It was true. While Quinn worked with the horses, Faith had started spending time in the corral as well, watching his techniques and eventually helping with the gentler aspects of the training. The horses responded well to her calm presence, and she found a deep satisfaction in the work. But it was the time they spent together, working side by side, that truly made Faith's heart sing. Quinn was easy to be with, comfortable in his own skin in a way that allowed her to relax and be herself. They talked about everything and nothing, sharing stories of their pasts, their hopes for the future, their observations about the world around them. Summer deepened into the rich heat of August. One evening, Quinn invited Faith to dinner at the cabin, saying he wanted to show her something special. Curious, she arrived to find the table set with more care than usual, wildflowers in a mason jar in the center, and the smell of roasting meat filling the air. "What is the occasion?" she asked. "We have been working together for a month now," Quinn said, pulling out a chair for her. "And the business has already grown because of your management. I wanted to celebrate and to thank you properly." Dinner was simple but delicious, venison steaks with roasted vegetables and fresh bread. Quinn had even procured a bottle of wine from somewhere, a luxury in this remote territory. As they ate and talked and laughed, Faith realized with startling clarity that she was happy. Truly, deeply happy in a way she had not thought possible after all her losses. "What are you thinking?" Quinn asked, catching her smiling to herself. "Just that this past month has been good," Faith said. "Better than good. I feel like myself again, or maybe like a version of myself I never got to be before." "I know what you mean," Quinn said. He reached across the table, his hand palm up in invitation. Faith placed her hand in his, their fingers intertwining naturally. "These weeks with you have been the best I can remember. You have brought something into my life I did not even know was missing." "What is that?" Faith asked softly. "Joy," he said simply. "Hope, the feeling that tomorrow might hold something wonderful instead of just more of the same." Faith's breath caught in her throat. She could see in his eyes that this was more than gratitude or friendship, and when she examined her own heart honestly, she knew she felt the same. Somewhere in the past weeks, amidst the ledgers and the horses and the quiet evenings on the porch, she had fallen in love with Quinn Zimmerman. "Quinn," she began, not sure what she wanted to say but needing to say something. He squeezed her hand gently. "I know it has not been long. I know we met under unusual circumstances, and you might think it is too soon to feel what I am feeling. But I have to be honest with you, Faith. I am falling in love with you. Actually, I think I have been falling since the moment I caught you outside that general store." Tears spilled down Faith's cheeks, but she was smiling. "I thought it was just me," she whispered. "I thought maybe I was confusing gratitude with something else, or that I was being foolish." "It is not just you," Quinn said, standing and moving around the table to kneel beside her chair. He took both her hands in his, looking up at her with those steady gray eyes. "I love you, Faith Zimmerman. I love your strength and your stubbornness and the way you bite your lip when you are working through a difficult column of figures. I love how patient you are with the horses and how you have brought order to my chaotic life. I love talking with you, being near you, seeing your face when I wake up in the morning, even if it is just passing you on the street." He paused, taking a shaky breath. "I know I do not have much to offer. Just this cabin, some horses, a small business. But if you think you could be happy with that with me, I would be honored to spend my life trying to make you smile every day." "Quinn," Faith said, framing his face with her hands, "I have nothing to offer either. No family, no dowry, no prospects beyond what I have built here with you. I came to Jordan Valley with nothing and expected nothing." His face fell slightly, and she realized he had misunderstood. She leaned forward, bringing her forehead to rest against his. "But you have given me everything that matters," she continued. "Purpose, stability, happiness, and love. So much love I do not know what to do with it all." She pulled back to look him in the eyes. "I love you too, Quinn Zimmerman, with everything I am and everything I hope to be." The kiss, when it came, was tender and sweet, full of promise and hope. Quinn's hands came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing away her tears as his lips moved gently against hers. It was Faith's first kiss, and she knew in her bones it would be her last first kiss, because she would never want to kiss anyone else. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Quinn rested his forehead against hers again. "Marry me," he said. "Not today, not even next week. Whenever you are ready. But say you will marry me, Faith." "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you." They sat there for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms, making whispered plans for their future. They decided to marry in October, after the heat of summer had broken, but before the harsh Montana winter set in. It would give them time to prepare properly and for Quinn to build an addition onto the cabin, expanding it into a real family home. The next weeks passed in a blur of happiness and hard work. Word spread through Jordan Valley about their engagement, and the town seemed genuinely pleased. Mrs. Patterson offered to host a small reception at the boarding house after the ceremony. Doc Harvey agreed to give Faith away, having developed a grandfatherly affection for her. The pastor at the small church was delighted to perform the ceremony. Faith continued managing the business, which kept growing as word spread about Quinn's skill with horses. She also began sewing her wedding dress in the evenings. Simple white cotton with lace at the collar and cuffs, made from fabric Quinn insisted on buying for her from the general store. Quinn worked like a man possessed on the cabin addition, determined to have it finished before the wedding. He added 2 new rooms, one that could serve as a proper bedroom for them and another that could be a nursery someday, though neither spoke of that possibility aloud yet. He built new furniture, refinished the floors, even installed glass windows instead of the oiled paper that had covered some of the openings. On a crisp October morning, with golden leaves falling from the cottonwood trees and a deep blue sky overhead, Faith Zimmerman became Faith Zimmerman, wife of Quinn Zimmerman. The coincidence of their shared surname had become a joke between them, a sign that perhaps fate had intended them to find each other all along. Faith wore her handmade dress with wildflowers woven into her hair. Quinn stood at the altar in his best suit, his eyes never leaving her face as she walked down the short aisle on Doc Harvey's arm. His expression held such love, such reverence, that Faith felt her own eyes fill with tears of joy. "Dearly beloved," Pastor Williams began, and Faith focused on every word, wanting to remember this moment forever. When it came time for the vows, Quinn took her hands in his and spoke in a clear, strong voice that carried through the small church. "I, Quinn, take you, Faith, to be my wedded wife. I promise to love you, protect you, stand beside you in all circumstances, and wake every morning grateful that you are in my life. You are my greatest blessing, and I will spend all my days trying to be worthy of you." Faith's voice shook slightly with emotion as she replied, "I, Faith, take you, Quinn, to be my wedded husband. I promise to love you, support you, build a life with you, and remind you every day that you are my reason for hope. You saved me when I had nothing, and I will spend my life showing you that I have everything to offer because I offer it to you." There was not a dry eye in the church when Pastor Williams pronounced them husband and wife. Quinn's kiss was gentle and respectful given the setting, but Faith could feel the promise of passion in it, the barely restrained emotion. The reception at the boarding house was a joyous affair. The whole town seemed to have turned out, bringing food and well wishes. Someone had a fiddle, and there was dancing in the street as the afternoon wore into evening. Faith danced with Quinn until her feet ached, his strong arms guiding her through steps she barely knew, both of them laughing like children. As the sun began to set and the party wound down, Quinn swept Faith into his arms despite her laughing protests and carried her the whole distance to their cabin. He kicked open the door, which he had left unlocked, and finally set her down in the main room. Faith looked around with wonder. While she had been getting ready at the boarding house, Quinn must have come home to prepare. Candles flickered everywhere, casting warm, golden light. Fresh wildflowers filled every available container. The bed in the new bedroom, which she could see through the open door, had been made up with new linens and quilts. "Quinn," she breathed. "It is beautiful." "You are beautiful," he said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. He pressed a kiss to her neck, just below her ear, and she shivered. "My beautiful wife." "That is going to take some getting used to," Faith said, turning in his arms to face him. "Being someone's wife, having a husband." "We have all the time in the world to get used to it," Quinn said, cupping her face in his hands. "A whole lifetime if I have my way." Their wedding night was tender and passionate, awkward in moments as all first times are, but full of love and patience. Quinn was gentle with Faith, aware of her inexperience, taking time to show her pleasure before seeking his own. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the new bed, skin against skin, hearts beating in synchronized rhythm. "I love you," Faith whispered into the darkness. "I never believed I could be this happy." "Neither did I," Quinn admitted. "After my parents died, after years of just going through the motions, I thought this kind of happiness was for other people. But then a bullet went astray, and I caught an angel, and everything changed." Faith laughed softly. "I am hardly an angel. You are to me," Quinn insisted, kissing her forehead. "You are everything to me." They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, and when Faith woke the next morning to sunlight streaming through the new glass windows and Quinn's sleeping face on the pillow beside hers, she felt a contentment so profound it brought tears to her eyes. Life settled into new rhythms. As husband and wife, they worked side by side every day. Faith managed the business from a desk Quinn set up in the main room, allowing her to keep track of correspondence and accounts while still being part of the household. Quinn continued training horses, and Faith's involvement in that aspect grew as well. Word spread about Quinn's methods and Faith's business acumen, and soon they had clients from as far as Helena and Butt. They hired a young man, Peter, to help with the daily care of the horses, which freed up more of Quinn's time for actual training. Winter came, harsh and beautiful, blanketing Jordan Valley in white. Quinn and Faith spent long evenings by the fire, reading aloud to each other from books borrowed from the pastor's small library, or simply talking about their dreams for the future. They wanted children eventually, but agreed to wait a bit to have time to establish their business and enjoy being newlyweds. But nature has its own timeline. By February, Faith knew she was pregnant. She waited until she was certain before telling Quinn, wanting to be sure. When she finally shared the news one evening after supper, his reaction was everything she could have hoped for. He swept her into his arms, spinning her around despite her laughing protests, his face transformed by pure joy. "A baby," he kept saying. "We are going to have a baby." "In late summer, I think," Faith said, her hands resting protectively over her still flat stomach. "Are you happy?" "Happy," Quinn set her down carefully as if she might break. "Faith, I am beyond happy. I am terrified and thrilled and already so in love with this child I can barely stand it." He knelt down and pressed a kiss to her stomach, his hand spanning her waist. "Hello in there," he said softly. "I am your father, and I cannot wait to meet you." The pregnancy was not easy. Faith suffered from terrible sickness in the early months that left her weak and miserable. Quinn was endlessly patient, holding her hair when she was ill, bringing her weak tea and dry toast, taking over more of the business correspondence when she could not focus on the figures. "I am sorry," Faith said one particularly bad morning, after she had barely kept down any food for 3 days. "For what?" Quinn asked, bathing her face with a cool cloth. "For being useless, for not being able to help with the business properly." He looked at her with such tenderness it made her want to cry. "Faith, you are growing our child. That is not useless. That is the most important thing you have ever done. The business can wait. The horses can wait. You and this baby are what matter." By spring, the sickness had passed and Faith bloomed. Her body changed, swelling with new life, and she found herself marveling at the miracle of it. Quinn was endlessly fascinated by her growing belly, his hands constantly seeking it out, his face lighting up whenever he felt the baby kick. They argued playfully about names. Quinn liked traditional names, strong names. Faith preferred something a bit more unusual. They made lists and debated and laughed, leaving the final decision until they could meet their child. Summer arrived, hot and golden. Faith grew huge and uncomfortable, barely able to manage the heat. Quinn set up a chair for her in the coolest part of the cabin and forbade her from doing any heavy work. She chafed at the restriction but secretly appreciated his protectiveness. Doc Harvey came by regularly to check on her. "Any day now," he pronounced in late August. "That baby is in position and ready to meet the world." He was right. 3 days later, just before dawn, Faith woke Quinn with a hand on his shoulder. "It is time," she said, and he saw the mixture of excitement and fear in her eyes. The next hours were the longest of Quinn's life. He stayed by Faith's side through the whole ordeal, holding her hand, wiping her face, offering whatever comfort he could as she labored to bring their child into the world. Mrs. Patterson came to assist Doc Harvey, and between the three of them they coached Faith through each contraction, each push. Finally, as the sun reached its zenith, a baby's cry filled the cabin. "It is a boy," Doc Harvey announced, placing the squirming, red-faced infant on Faith's chest. A big, healthy boy. Faith stared down at her son with wonder, her hand coming up to touch his tiny face. He had Quinn's gray eyes and a shock of dark hair, and he was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "We have been waiting for you." Quinn, tears streaming unashamedly down his face, wrapped his arms around both of them. "He is perfect," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "You are perfect. Thank you, Faith. Thank you for this gift." They named him Thomas after Quinn's father, with the middle name James after Faith's. Thomas James Zimmerman came into the world strong and healthy, with a powerful set of lungs that he was not afraid to use. The early weeks were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Faith had never been so tired in her life, but she had also never felt such overwhelming love. Quinn was a devoted father, getting up with her for the nighttime feedings, changing diapers without complaint, spending hours just staring at his son with an expression of awed disbelief. "I cannot believe he is ours," Quinn said one night, holding Thomas while Faith tried to get a few precious hours of sleep. "That we made this perfect little person." Life with a newborn was chaotic, but they managed. Peter took on more responsibility with the horses, and Faith did what business work she could while Thomas napped. The town rallied around them, with Mrs. Patterson bringing meals and other women stopping by with advice and hand-me-down baby clothes. Thomas grew quickly, hitting each milestone right on schedule. His first smile, directed at Quinn when he was 6 weeks old, made his father nearly weep with joy again. His first laugh, a gurgling giggle provoked by Faith's silly faces, became their favorite sound. By the time Thomas was a year old, walking wobbly steps between his parents and babbling in his own language, Quinn and Faith had established a new normal. The business continued to thrive, their reputation spreading throughout the territory. They had added another room to the cabin to serve as a dedicated office, keeping the business separate from family life. One evening, after Thomas had been put to bed, Faith and Quinn sat on the porch watching the stars come out. It had become their tradition, this quiet time together at the end of each day. "You ever think about that day?" Faith asked, her head resting on Quinn's shoulder. "The day I was shot, sometimes," Quinn admitted. "I think about what might have happened if I had not been there, or if I had just walked past, not wanting to get involved." "I think about it too," Faith said, "about how different my life would be, how empty." Quinn turned to kiss the top of her head. "I was so lost before you came into my life. I did not even realize how lost until I found you, or you found me, however you want to look at it." "I think we found each other," Faith said. "I think maybe we were always meant to find each other, and that bullet was just the universe's way of making sure we did not miss our chance." "That is a nice thought," Quinn said. "Makes it seem like all the hard things we went through before were leading us to that moment, to each other." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the night sounds of the Montana Territory surrounding them. An owl hooted in the cottonwoods. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. The horses whickered softly in the barn. "Quinn," Faith said eventually. "Yes, I am pregnant again." She felt him go still beneath her, then he gently moved her so he could see her face. "Really?" Faith nodded, a smile spreading across her features. "I am sure this time. The baby should come in the spring." Quinn let out a whoop of joy that probably woke Thomas inside, then pulled Faith into a kiss that took her breath away. "Another baby," he said against her lips. "Another perfect baby. Are you happy?" Faith asked, though his reaction made the question unnecessary. "I am beyond happy," Quinn said. "I am blessed. Blessed with you, with Thomas, with this life we have built together. I wake up every morning amazed that this is real, that you are real. This pregnancy was easier than the first." Faith felt well throughout, barely any sickness at all. Her body knew what to do now, and she remained active much longer, helping with the business and the horses and chasing after an increasingly energetic Thomas. When spring arrived, bringing with it warming temperatures and the first green shoots pushing through the soil, Faith delivered their second child. Another boy, this one with Faith's dark hair and a dimple in his cheek when he smiled. They named him William Henry, called Will from the start. If Thomas had been an easy baby, Will was his opposite. He had colic that kept them all up at night for months. He was fussy about eating and sleeping and being held. But he also had a sweet disposition once the colic passed, with a ready smile and a cheerful nature that made the difficult early months worthwhile. Thomas, now too, was fascinated by his baby brother, wanting to help with everything. Quinn and Faith worked together to make sure Thomas did not feel displaced, giving him special jobs and alone time with each parent. The years began to flow one into another, marked by the changing seasons and the growing children. Jordan Valley grew too, adding new businesses and more families. The Zimmerman horse training operation became one of the most respected in the territory, with clients coming from hundreds of miles away. When Thomas was 5 and Will 3, Faith discovered she was pregnant a third time. This time, their surprise and delight were tempered by experience. They knew what to expect, knew the exhaustion and chaos a newborn would bring. But they welcomed it anyway, their home and hearts open to expanding their family. This third baby made her entrance into the world on a snowy December evening, arriving fast and with minimal fuss. A daughter, finally, with bright red hair that came from neither parent and green eyes that would later shift to hazel. Where did she get that red hair? Quinn wondered aloud, staring at his daughter with the same awestruck expression he had worn for each of his children's births. "My grandmother had red hair," Faith said, exhausted but happy. "I had forgotten until just now." They named her Rose Ellen, and she quickly proved to be a force of nature. Even as a baby, she knew what she wanted and demanded it with volume and persistence. Thomas and Will were both besotted with their baby sister, competing to make her smile. The cabin, which had seemed so spacious when it was just Quinn and Faith, now felt full to bursting with 3 children. So Quinn began planning another addition, more bedrooms for the growing family. They hired a crew from town to help with the construction, and by the time Rose was walking, they had nearly doubled the size of the cabin. Life was busy, chaotic, exhausting, and wonderful. Quinn and Faith worked together in all things, partners in every sense of the word. They managed the business together, raised their children together, built a life that was rich in love if not always in material wealth. The boys grew into sturdy, kind-hearted children with their father's way with horses and their mother's quick minds. Rose was as wild and free as the Montana wind, refusing to be confined by expectations of what a little girl should be. When Rose was 5, Thomas 11, and Will 9, Faith walked out onto the porch one evening to find Quinn sitting alone, staring at the sunset. Something in his posture made her heart clench. "What is wrong?" she asked, settling beside him. "Nothing is wrong," Quinn said, taking her hand. "I was just thinking, Thomas will be a man soon, old enough to make his own choices about his life. And I realize that time has passed so quickly. Sometimes it feels like just yesterday I was catching a falling woman outside the general store." "That was 14 years ago," Faith said softly. 14 years since my life changed completely." "Mine too," Quinn agreed. He turned to look at her, and she saw tears in his eyes. "You are still the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. I love you more now than I did on our wedding day, and I loved you so much then I thought I might burst with it." Faith felt her own eyes fill. "I love you too. Everything good in my life comes from you. Our children, our home, our life together. You took a woman who had nothing and gave her everything." "No," Quinn said firmly. "You always had everything, Faith. Strength, intelligence, courage, kindness. I just gave you a place to let those things flourish. You saved yourself. I just had the honor of being there to witness it." They kissed as the sun disappeared behind the mountains, the same mountains that had witnessed their first meeting, their first words, the beginning of their great love story. The years continued their march. Thomas grew into a fine young man, as skilled with horses as his father, with a good head for business like his mother. Will was quieter, more studious, and surprised them all by expressing an interest in becoming a teacher. Rose remained untamed, declaring at the age of 12 that she intended to travel the world and have adventures. Quinn and Faith grew older together gracefully, silver threading through their hair, lines deepening around their eyes and mouths. But they never lost the spark between them, the easy affection and deep love that had brought them together. They still sat on the porch every evening, weather permitting, talking about their day, their dreams, their children, their life. More grandchildren came as the boys married and started families of their own. Thomas wed a sweet girl from town named Sarah and gave them 2 grandsons and a granddaughter. Will eventually moved to Helena to pursue his teaching career, but came back to Jordan Valley to marry his childhood sweetheart, Emma, and they had twin girls. Rose, true to her word, left Montana when she turned 18, traveling east to see the great cities and eventually finding work as a journalist. She never married, content with her independent life, but she visited often, regaling them with stories of her adventures that made Quinn alternately proud and terrified. As they entered their 50s, Quinn and Faith gradually turned more of the business over to Thomas, who had a real talent for it. They remained involved, but more as advisors than active participants. It gave them time to simply enjoy each other's company, to take long rides through the countryside, to visit with their grandchildren, to appreciate the life they had built. One summer evening, as they celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary with their extended family gathered around, Faith looked at the scene before her with wonder. The yard was full of children and grandchildren, laughter and conversation filling the air. Food covered 2 long tables. Someone was playing a guitar and a few people were dancing. Quinn came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist as he had done 1,000 times before. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "I am thinking about the day we met," Faith said, leaning back against him. "About a woman who thought she had nothing, and a man who saw everything she truly was." "I am thinking about that too," Quinn admitted. "About how a single moment can change everything, how one choice to help, to care, to open your heart can lead to all of this." He gestured to their family, their home, their life. "I have nothing to offer," Faith said softly, echoing the words she had spoken so long ago. Quinn turned her in his arms, that same gentle smile on his face that had stolen her heart 30 years before. "You offer me a reason to wake up," he replied, as he had then. "Every single day for 30 years, you have given me a reason to wake up, and I will love you until the day I stop waking up at all, and beyond that if I have any say in the matter." Faith kissed him as the sun set behind them, surrounded by the evidence of their love, the family they had created, the life they had built from nothing. And she thought, not for the first time, that the bullet that had brought them together had been the luckiest unlucky thing that had ever happened to her. Because it had led her here, to this man, to this life, to this love that had sustained her through everything and would continue to sustain her until her last breath and beyond. They were no longer young, but their love was as vibrant as ever. As the party continued around them, Quinn led Faith in a slow dance to the guitar music, holding her close, their bodies moving together with the ease of long practice. Their children and grandchildren watched with smiles, witnessing the deep bond that had always existed between them. "Do you remember our wedding dance?" Faith asked, her head resting on Quinn's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I remember every moment of that day," Quinn said. "How beautiful you looked, how my hands shook when I put the ring on your finger, how I could not believe you were really mine." "I have always been yours," Faith said. "From the moment you caught me, I think some part of me knew." "Knew what?" "That you were my home. That wherever you were, I would be safe, loved, cherished. That with you, I could be everything I was meant to be." Quinn pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "You have exceeded everything I ever dreamed you could be. You are the best person I know, Faith. The best wife, the best mother, the best partner. My life began the day I met you, and every day since has been a gift." As the evening deepened and the party wound down, their family began to depart. Thomas and his family to their own home nearby. Will and Emma to the house they kept in town for when they visited from Helena. Rose to the hotel, as she was leaving the next day for her next assignment. Finally, Quinn and Faith were alone again, standing on their porch in the gathering darkness, the stars beginning to appear overhead. The same stars that had witnessed their first kiss, their wedding night, every significant moment of their life together. "Another good day," Quinn said, taking Faith's hand. "Another good day," she agreed. "One of thousands. and hopefully thousands more to come. They stood there a while longer, breathing in the cool night air, listening to the familiar sounds of home. Then they went inside together as they had every night for 30 years, ready to face whatever tomorrow might bring. As long as they faced it together, they knew they could handle anything. Because their love had been forged in hardship and refined by time, tested by life's challenges and found unbreakable. What had started with a bullet and a fall had become the greatest love story Jordan Valley had ever known. Years continued to pass, bringing with them the inevitable march of time. Quinn and Faith grew into their 60s, then their 70s, their bodies slowing but their minds remaining sharp. They watched their grandchildren grow and begin to have children of their own, making them great-grandparents. The territory changed around them too. Montana achieved statehood when they were in their 50s. Jordan Valley grew from a rough frontier town into an established community with schools, churches, and proper roads. The wild days of the Old West faded into memory, replaced by a more civilized era. But Quinn and Faith remained, constants in a changing world, their love a beacon for all who knew them. They were the couple everyone pointed to, the example of what marriage could be when two people truly committed to each other. When Quinn was 78 and Faith 76, he became ill. It started as a cold that would not quite go away, then developed into something more serious. The doctor, a young man who had trained back east, said it was his lungs, weakened by decades of breathing in dust and smoke and cold air. Faith nursed him with the same devotion he had shown her in the early days of their marriage. She sat by his bedside, reading to him, talking with him, holding his hand. Their children and grandchildren came to visit, filling the house with love and laughter even in the face of illness. On a spring morning with wildflowers blooming outside the window and Faith's hand in his, Quinn looked at his wife with eyes that still held all the love they had carried for nearly 50 years. "I have had a good life," he said, his voice weak but steady. "The best life because of you." "Do not talk like you are leaving me," Faith said, though tears streamed down her face. "We still have time." "We have had 50 years," Quinn said. 50 years of waking up beside you, of building a life with you, of loving you. Not everyone gets that. I am the luckiest man who ever lived." "I am not ready," Faith whispered. "I do not know how to be in this world without you." Quinn squeezed her hand with what strength he had left. "You are the strongest person I have ever known. You were strong when I met you, and you are strong now. You will be all right, Faith. Our children will take care of you, and you have a lifetime of memories to keep you company." "But I want you," Faith said, her voice breaking. "I will always want you. And I will always be with you," Quinn promised. "Every sunset, every horse you see, every moment of joy with our family. I will be there, loving you still." He passed peacefully that afternoon, surrounded by his family, his hand still clasped in Faith's. And though she grieved deeply, though she felt a hole in her heart that could never truly be filled, she also felt gratitude for the incredible gift they had been given. 50 years of love, of partnership, of building a life together from nothing. 3 children, 7 grandchildren, and 12 great-grandchildren, all carrying forward the legacy of their love. A business that had brought them stability and prosperity. A home filled with memories of laughter and joy. At Quinn's funeral, Faith stood to speak, her voice steady despite her grief. "My husband used to say that I gave him a reason to wake up," she told the assembled crowd. "But the truth is, we gave each other that reason. Every single day we chose each other, chose love, chose to build something beautiful together. That is what I want you all to remember. Not that we lost him, though we did and it hurts terribly, but that we had him. That for 50 years he loved me and I loved him, and that love created all of this. She gestured to their large family. "He will live on in every one of us." Faith lived another 5 years without Quinn, and while she missed him every single day, she also found peace. She spent time with her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, telling them stories of the old days, of their grandfather and the life they had built together. She sat on the porch every evening, watching the sunset, and felt Quinn's presence beside her as surely as if he were actually there. And she knew that when her time came, he would be waiting for her, ready to take her hand and walk into whatever came next together. When Faith passed at the age of 81, peacefully in her sleep with a smile on her face, her family gathered to mourn and celebrate her. They buried her beside Quinn under the cottonwood trees with a simple headstone that read, "Faith Zimmerman, beloved wife, mother, and friend." She had everything to offer. Their story became legend in Jordan Valley, passed down through generations. The tale of two people who found each other against all odds, who built a love that lasted a lifetime and beyond. The woman who thought she had nothing and the man who showed her she had everything. And on quiet evenings, when the wind rustles through the cottonwood trees and the sun sets behind the mountains painting the sky in gold and crimson, some say you can still see two figures sitting on the old porch, holding hands and watching the day fade into night, together for all eternity as they always were meant to be.